This is the installation video for our half-round fenders. The first step in your fender installation is to measure the suspension drop on your truck. So here we're fully aired up, and then after you note that measurement, you're going to go ahead and drop the air. Then we'll measure that same spot, and in this particular case the suspension traveled exactly 3 inches. If you've got a suspension stop like this, you can measure that distance. Again, it's 3 inches on this particular truck. If you've got a spring suspension, measure from the stop to the spring to identify what that measurement is. Then go ahead and air back up. We want to be installing with the air up. A lot of fender manufacturers ask that you do the install with the air down. The reason we want to do it with the air up is to not get this situation here where you have an inconsistent gap between the fender and the tire. See, there's a big gap on one side and a smaller gap. We want that fender centered over the... Here's our accessory spacer kit. It comes with various thicknesses of blocks to either raise or lower it to get it right where you need. So in this case, again, we had a 3-inch drop. We're going to add 3/4 of an inch to that, so we have when the air is down, you still have that 3/4 gap. So you tape those together, place them on the wheels, and put the fender on. And that spacer kit is going to keep the fender in place. It's not going to shift around on you if you bump into it, like say for instance using a wood block. Here's our patented bracket system. We're going to attach the swivel to the paddle arm using a split lock washer and nut. Going to go ahead and snug it up a little bit just so you can still rotate the swivel and the paddle arm. And we're going to locate which bolt location we're going to remove the huck or bolt. And you can see with our patented system you can use a lot of different of these locations. So this location would work. You could rotate it a little bit more and use one further back. You just want to ensure that you get that paddle arm as low down on the fender as possible, but still keeping it on the upper rib. That getting it low is going to prevent the fender from blowing back into the tire and burning it up, which you'll see on some competitors quite often. So again, in the back you'll locate that bolt, and we'll go ahead and get those removed. After you get those bolts removed, we're going to attach the swivel to the frame. We recommend hand threading the nut onto the bolt just to ensure you don't cross thread anything. Next, you'll impact it tight and try and keep it just loose enough. If you get it too tight, you can just hit it in reverse a little bit and swivel it back up out of the way. Next, we'll attach the paddle arm to the swivel. Then you'll tap the swivel down so that the paddle arm is touching the fender, and repeat on the other side. After you have everything in place, we're going to tighten the swivel to the frame. After you installed your bracket arms, we want to make sure that the fender is still sitting level front to back, as well as from the frame to the fender in both the front and the back. We typically will just measure to a rib, double check, and here you want to make sure you're measuring off the frame, not the side rail. Now with everything in place, it's time to attach the fender to the paddle arm. You'll use the hole in the paddle arm as your drilling guide. To start, we'll only be drilling one hole through the fender on each side. On fenders that are narrower with only 2 ribs, like our fender for 19.5s or super singles, you'll drill on the innermost rib. On fenders with 3 ribs, you'll start out by drilling the center rib. Here's an up-close view of the plug socket on the paddle arm. You'll slide the 5/16 bolt onto the plug and place it inside the paddle arm. Once tightened, the bolt will hold the plug in place. Next, take the 5/16 lock nut and fender washer and tighten from the inside. Now you'll drill on the back side of the fender through the center hole. Insert the bolt and plug and tighten from the inside with the washer and lock nut. Now it's time to remove the spacers that are between the fender and the top of the tires. Here's a good time to point out if you ever need to remove your fender for maintenance. It's as simple as removing a 1/2-inch bolt that holds the paddle arm to the swivel. Other fender manufacturers' installation brackets make it very difficult to get the top of the fenders to be nice and level. As you can see in the picture on the left, both fenders have opposing pitches. One pitches towards the frame and one pitches away from the frame. In the picture on the right, showing the rear view, you can see all 4 fenders have a varying pitch. This is why we've only placed 1 bolt in the center of each rib. This allows you to tilt the fender until it's exactly level. Once you have your fender level, you can continue drilling the rest of the holes. Insert the remaining 2 plugs and bolts. And fasten with a fender washer and lock nut. You'll want to torque these to 13 foot-pounds. And then you'll repeat the process on the backside. That's all there is to it, and now you have a perfectly mounted fender.